For this video, I will be presenting information on the topic, the Lord's Supper. So basically, the Lord's Supper, also known as the Last Supper, can refer to two different things. First, it can refer to the actual final meal that Jesus shared with his disciples. During this meal, Jesus washes his disciples' feet, teaching them to love and serve one another through this selfless action. Then, Jesus also predicts not only Judas's betrayal, but also predicts that Peter will deny him 3 times. Lastly, one of the key events of the supper is the breaking of the bread, which he describes as his body, and the passing around of the wine and the cup, which he describes as his blood. There are many artistic portrayals of this biblical event, the most famous of which is Leonardo da Vinci's painting, titled The Last Supper. You can see this piece right here, with Jesus sitting at the center, surrounded by his disciples. Secondly, the Lord's Supper can refer to the Eucharist, a religious ceremony also known as the Holy Communion, Mass, the Blessed Sacrament, etc. It is a reenactment of the events that occurred at the Last Supper, which are specifically the breaking of the bread and the drinking of the wine, or grape juice, which is a common replacement. This reenactment is done in order to remember Christ's sacrifice for us through his life, suffering, death, and resurrection. It is also an act of obedience to his commands. As it is written, "This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Luke 22:19. This emphasis on the body even shows the unity of the body of Christ. Many denominations incorporate this ceremony, but they do still have differences in their opinions about exactly how, where, and how long Christ is present in it. Some Christians reject the idea of a real presence, but believe only in a ceremonial remembrance. Others, however, do believe in a real presence. For example, Roman Catholics believe in transubstantiation, the belief that the substance bread and wine is changed into the body and blood of Christ. The Lutherans also believe in a similar concept, called the sacramental union. The Lord's Supper has been an integral part of Christian teaching for a very long time. Many of the early church fathers had their own opinions on it. The 3 that I will be concentrating on today are St. Ignatius, St. Justin the Martyr, and St. Irenaeus. St. Ignatius of Antioch was a disciple of John the Apostle, a bishop, and a martyr. He suggested that the Eucharist played a central and unifying role in the Church. He even referred to it as the medicine of immortality. He saw it as an example of Christ's undying love, feeding us with his flesh and blood. St. Justin the Martyr connected Jesus' sacrifice and the Eucharist to a prophecy by Malachi. He saw it as a replacement of the sacrifices in the temples of Jerusalem. He also clearly believed that after the consecration, it was no longer bread and wine, but truly Jesus' flesh and blood. He even emphasized the idea that by being nourished through the body and the blood, we were being metabolized by Christ into his body. St. Irenaeus of Lyons was a bishop and a martyr, who believed that the bread and wine rises to heavenly dignity after receiving the words of God. They would exist in both earthly and heavenly reality. He believed that by receiving the Eucharist, Christians' human bodies would then no longer be corruptible and would have the hope of resurrection. This was an argument against the Gnostics, who believed that the material world was evil and not created good. There are still many differences in opinions about the Lord's Supper, as can be seen by the previously mentioned denominations. However, the Lord's Supper is still a key part of Christianity today. It is a prevalent part of Christian traditions and is frequently mentioned in both sermons and Bible studies.